What most people misunderstand about the terrifying moment an empath turns dark is that it does not happen suddenly. It is not a dramatic transformation where kindness disappears overnight and cruelty takes its place. It is much slower than that, much quieter, much more dangerous. Because empaths are usually seen as gentle people. They listen, they forgive, they carry pain that does not belong to them. They understand what others feel, often before a word is spoken. People admire that softness, but many also exploit it. They mistake patience for weakness. They mistake silence for surrender. They mistake compassion for endless tolerance. And that is where the danger begins. An empath can survive betrayal once, maybe twice. They can survive being misunderstood, being used, being blamed for problems they did not create. But every wound leaves something behind, not always anger, sometimes exhaustion, sometimes numbness, sometimes a cold realization that the kindness they gave was feeding the very people destroying them. The terrifying moment is not when the empath becomes evil. It is when they stop caring about protecting the people who hurt them. That is when everything changes. Because an empath knows human nature deeply. They know insecurities, hidden motives, silent fears, emotional weak points. While others learn manipulation to gain power, the empath understands these things naturally through observation and pain. Most never use that knowledge against anyone. Their morals hold them back. But when enough damage is done, morals can become wounded too. Then the person who once healed others becomes impossible to read. They no longer explain themselves. They no longer beg for fairness. They no longer offer unlimited chances. The warmth disappears, replaced by distance so sharp it feels like punishment. And the people who benefited from their kindness are usually the last to realize what happened. They think the empath is bluffing. They think the old version will return. They think one apology can reopen a door they slammed shut 100 times. But dark empaths do not always seek revenge with chaos. Sometimes revenge is silence. Sometimes it is success. Sometimes it is emotional detachment so complete that the people who once controlled them suddenly feel powerless. The real fear is this: when a deeply compassionate person finally stops caring, they often become stronger than the people who pushed them there. Because now they still understand emotions, but no longer feel obligated to save everyone. And that version is not loud. It is calm, focused, unreachable. That is the moment people call terrifying. Not because the empath turned dark, but because they finally turned their light away. Repeated betrayal does not usually turn empathy into anger first. It turns it into fatigue. Most people think pain creates rage immediately, but for an empath, the first reaction is often understanding. They try to see why the person lied. They try to understand why someone became cold, selfish, dishonest, or cruel. They tell themselves maybe that person is hurting inside. Maybe they are confused. Maybe they did not mean it. So instead of protecting themselves, they excuse what happened. This is why empaths often stay in harmful situations longer than others. They are not blind. They see the warning signs clearly. They just keep hoping that compassion will fix what character refuses to fix. They believe patience can heal patterns that were never meant to change. Every betrayal then adds another invisible weight. A broken promise here, a disrespectful comment there, being ignored when they needed support, being remembered only when someone wanted comfort, being blamed for reacting to wounds others caused. None of these moments may seem huge alone, but together they create emotional erosion. And erosion is dangerous because it is slow. The empath still smiles, still helps, still shows up. But inside, energy is disappearing. They begin to feel tired in ways sleep cannot repair. Conversations feel heavier. Trust feels expensive. Even kindness starts to feel like labor. This is the stage many people never notice. They think the empath is fine because the empath remains calm. They think everything is normal because there was no dramatic confrontation. But emotional exhaustion is quiet. It hides behind politeness. It hides behind patience. It hides behind the sentence, "It's okay," spoken by someone who knows it is not okay at all. Over time, something painful happens. The empath starts losing the natural joy they once gave freely. Their warmth becomes selective. Their responses become shorter. Their heart is still kind, but it is now guarded by tiredness. They no longer have endless energy to carry everyone else while neglecting themselves. This is not cruelty. It is depletion. When a person gives love faster than they receive respect, exhaustion becomes inevitable. When they keep forgiving without seeing change, hope becomes draining. When they are expected to understand everyone while no one tries to understand them, the soul becomes heavy. Eventually, betrayal stops hurting the same way. Not because it became acceptable, but because numbness begins replacing shock. They start expecting disappointment. They stop being surprised when people take more than they give. And that expectation is one of the saddest things that can happen to a loving person. Because once empathy becomes linked with pain, the empath changes. They become slower to trust, slower to open up, slower to believe words without actions. What used to flow naturally now moves through filters built by experience. Some call this becoming cold. It is not coldness. It is what happens when a warm heart has been burned too many times. And the deepest tragedy is that many people only notice the empath's distance after they were the reason it was created. Repeated betrayal does not destroy empathy in one moment. It drains it drop by drop until even the strongest heart must choose itself. And when that day comes, the person everyone leaned on finally walks away carrying what remains of their light. People often think kindness has no limits. They assume the patient person will always stay patient. They assume the understanding person will always understand. They assume the one who forgives today will forgive tomorrow, and the day after that, no matter what happens. That belief is where many people make their biggest mistake. Kindness is powerful, but it is not weakness. Patience is noble, but it is not permission. Compassion is beautiful, but it is not an invitation to disrespect someone endlessly. Yet many people confuse these things because they only look at behavior, not the strength required behind it. They see a calm person and think they can be pushed. They see someone who avoids conflict and think they are afraid. They see someone who gives second chances and assume there will always be a third, fourth, and fifth. What they fail to understand is that true kindness usually belongs to strong people. It takes strength to stay calm when provoked. It takes discipline to choose understanding over revenge. It takes emotional intelligence to respond with grace when anger would be easier. Weak people react quickly. Strong people remain centered. But because strength in silence does not look dramatic, many fail to recognize it. They only respect loud boundaries, harsh words, and visible consequences. They do not notice quiet self-control. They do not value gentle restraint. So they keep crossing lines, believing there is no line at all. This happens often with empaths. Empaths tend to listen more than they speak. They often absorb tension instead of escalating it. They try to solve problems peacefully. They give people room to grow. To the wrong person, this looks like someone who can be taken for granted, so the disrespect continues. Little jokes that go too far, broken promises brushed aside, emotional demands with no appreciation, manipulation hidden behind excuses. And because the empath does not explode, others assume nothing is wrong. But boundaries are not always loud. Sometimes a boundary is disappointment remembered. Sometimes it is trust quietly decreasing. Sometimes it is emotional distance growing in silence. Sometimes it is the calm realization that access to them is no longer deserved. This is the moment people become confused. They say, "You changed." They say, "You became cold." They say, "Why are you acting different now?" But the empath did not suddenly change. They simply stopped accepting what should never have been normal. The boundary only feels shocking to those who benefited from the lack of one. And when it finally appears, it can feel severe not because it is cruel, but because it is clear. There are no long explanations, no dramatic speeches, no begging to be treated right, just a shift in energy, a closed door, a shorter response, a vanished availability. The same person once called soft now seems untouchable. That is because boundaries reveal what kindness was protecting all along: strength. Many people respect someone only after losing easy access to them. They appreciate presence only after absence. They understand value only after it is removed. By then, it is often too late. Because once a kind person is forced to build walls, they rarely rebuild the same open door. Never mistake gentleness for weakness. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is simply the strongest one waiting to be respected. An empath's greatest gift is not simply kindness. It is perception. They notice what others miss. They hear tension in someone's voice when everyone else hears normal words. They feel discomfort behind a fake smile. They sense jealousy hidden inside praise, sadness hidden inside anger, fear hidden inside control. While many people only respond to what is said, an empath often responds to what is felt. That ability can heal people. It allows them to comfort someone before tears fall. It helps them understand pain without needing long explanations. It gives them the power to make others feel seen, safe, and understood. This is why people are naturally drawn to them. Being understood is rare, and rare things attract attention. But every gift has another side. The same person who can sense wounds can also sense weaknesses. They know where someone is insecure. They know what someone desperately wants others to believe. They know which confidence is real and which confidence is performance. They know when someone is pretending not to care while secretly craving approval. They know where the mask ends and the fear begins. Most empaths never weaponize this knowledge. Their conscience stops them. Their compassion keeps them gentle. Even when hurt, they often choose silence over exposure. They would rather walk away than destroy someone emotionally. They know pain too well to casually create it in others. But when an empath is deeply wounded, something shifts. After enough betrayal, manipulation, and disrespect, mercy can become harder to access. Not because they lose all goodness, but because they become tired of protecting people who never protected them. Then the knowledge they once used to heal can become power. They know exactly what truth someone does not want spoken aloud. They know what behavior to withdraw from that will make someone feel the loss. They know how to stay calm while another person unravels emotionally. They know how silence can hit harder than shouting. They know that indifference can wound those who fed on attention. This is why an empath can become so unsettling. They do not need to scream. They do not need to threaten. They do not need obvious revenge. They understand people too well. A manipulative person often uses force, guilt, or confusion. A darkened empath can use precision. One sentence, one boundary, one moment of emotional detachment, one mirror held up to someone who spent years avoiding their own reflection. And that can feel terrifying because people expect kindness from the empath, they expect patience, they expect endless emotional labor. They do not expect the empath to fully understand them and choose not to rescue them anymore. That is the real power. Not cruelty, not destruction. Clarity. The ability to see someone clearly and refuse to be controlled by what you see. Still, this power comes with danger. If bitterness leads the way, the empath can become what once hurt them. Pain can turn insight into manipulation and wisdom into cold strategy. That is why self-awareness matters so much. Power without healing becomes another wound passed forward. The strongest empath is not the one who uses emotional knowledge to dominate others. It is the one who understands human weakness deeply and still chooses integrity. Because seeing darkness in people is easy. Seeing it, resisting it, and remaining whole, that is real strength. The most dramatic change in an empath is rarely anger. It is silence. People expect pain to look loud. They expect arguments, tears, emotional messages, doors slammed shut. They expect visible reactions because visible reactions are easy to understand. But when an empath has been pushed too far, the shift often happens in a way most people fail to notice. They simply begin to feel less. At first, it is subtle. They answer messages with less warmth. They stop explaining themselves in long paragraphs. They no longer chase misunderstandings just to keep peace. They listen, but something in their presence feels farther away. The body is there, but the emotional connection is thinning. Many mistake this stage for moodiness. It is usually self-protection. An empath spends much of life feeling deeply. They absorb tension, disappointment, hidden emotions, and the weight of other people's problems. They care when others do not care. They think about conversations long after everyone else has moved on. They carry emotional responsibilities no one asked them to carry, yet they carry them anyway. Over time, this becomes expensive. When someone repeatedly gives emotional energy into places where respect is absent, the mind starts defending itself. It cannot remain open forever while being wounded. So it does something intelligent. It numbs. Numbness is not always weakness. Sometimes it is survival. The empath who once worried about everyone suddenly stops asking how others feel. The person who once noticed every emotional shift no longer investigates tension in the room. They stop trying to fix broken dynamics. They stop translating people's bad behavior into excuses. They stop reaching. And for people who relied on that reaching, this feels shocking. They say, "Why are you distant?" They say, "You don't care like before." They say, "What happened to you?" What happened is simple. The person who cared too much learned the cost of caring without limits. This shift can feel cold to outsiders, but inside the empath, it is often grief. They are not enjoying detachment. They are mourning the version of themselves that loved openly. They are grieving the trust they once had, the softness they once gave freely, the innocence that believed effort would always be matched. That grief is quiet. No one sees it when they become more selective. No one notices it when they stop volunteering help. No one applauds it when they finally choose peace over people-pleasing. Yet this is one of the hardest transformations a sensitive person can go through, because feeling nothing after feeling everything can be disorienting. They may wonder if they became heartless. They may question whether they lost their true self, but often they have not lost themselves at all. They are recovering from overextension. Distance can be medicine. Silence can be healing. Emotional neutrality can be the nervous system finally resting after years of carrying too much. And sometimes, numbness is only temporary. Once safety returns, feeling returns too, but wiser, calmer, and guarded by boundaries. The old version may never fully come back. Good. That version was available to everyone, including those who misused it. The new version feels deeply too, but no longer at the expense of their own soul. Sometimes the strongest heart is the one that learns when not to bleed. What many people fear is not an empath's anger. Anger is understandable. It is loud, emotional, temporary. It rises, it burns, and eventually it fades. People know how to respond to anger. They defend themselves, argue back, apologize, or wait for the storm to pass. But losing access to an empath's light is different. That light is not weakness. It is warmth, patience, emotional safety, understanding, loyalty, and the rare ability to care without making everything about themselves. It is the energy that makes people feel calmer when life feels heavy. It is the presence that listens without judgment. It is the heart that keeps giving chances when others would have walked away long ago. Many people do not realize the value of that light while they still have it. They get used to being understood. They get used to being forgiven. They get used to someone always seeing the good in them, even when they are not showing it. They get used to emotional support arriving without request, kindness being offered without condition, patience being available without limit. And human nature often takes for granted what feels permanent. That is why some people only wake up when the light is gone, not dimmed, gone. The empath stops checking in, stops asking if they are okay, stops trying to repair every tension, stops giving warmth to people who gave them confusion, stops offering emotional shelter to those who kept creating storms. This creates a kind of emptiness many are not prepared for, because they thought the empath would always remain available. They believed no matter how careless they became, the connection would survive. They assumed loyalty had no breaking point. Then one day they meet a version of the empath that is calm, polite, and unreachable. No anger, no drama, no begging to be understood, just distance. And distance from a once loving person can feel heavier than conflict ever did. Why? Because anger still contains energy. Anger means something still matters. Anger means emotion is alive, but indifference sends a harsher message. The emotional door has closed. When an empath becomes indifferent, many people are forced to face themselves without the comforting mirror that once softened their flaws. They no longer have someone translating their bad behavior into excuses. They no longer have someone absorbing tension so they can avoid growth. They no longer have guaranteed acceptance. Now they feel the absence. And absence teaches lessons comfort never could. The terrifying part is not revenge. It is realizing you lost someone who loved deeply and you lost them through your own repeated choices. Because true empathic light is rare. Many can pretend to care. Few genuinely do. Few listen with their whole presence. Few remain kind after being hurt. Few offer peace in a world full of ego. So when someone extinguishes that light through neglect, manipulation, or disrespect, they often discover too late what they destroyed. The empath may heal, rebuild, and shine elsewhere. But the person who misused them is left with a silence that no apology can easily fill. Some losses scream. The deepest ones go quiet. And nothing is more haunting than the warmth you thought would wait forever, suddenly choosing never to return.